And it grew out of the thinking of Darwinism applied to social relationships. Then Darwinism and morality. Relative truth is birthed and moral absolutes are discarded. Once you remove, there is a true, there's a false, there is a right, there is a wrong. It has been playing out for decade after decade after decade. If it feels good, do it is nothing more than the roots of Darwinism applied by existentialists. That, by the way, Jean-Paul Sartre and remember Francis Schaeffer would write about all these existentialists, and remember the modern art with throwing paint everywhere and saying, wow, that's cool, that's who's to say what's beautiful and what's not. All that is rooted in what? If your origin is random chance, no purpose, no designer, no God, if you're just a blob on this little part of the solar system and this little planet, then it is absolutely intellectually consistent to say, like Jean-Paul Sartre, what he said, there is no meaning to life. And so the only meaning is to have an experience, even a negative experience of any kind. And who's to tell anyone what to do? What you see flowing out on the television and the movies and the more and more violence today is nothing more than decade after decade of an erosion of truth. Let's go on from humanism and morality to Darwinism and social relationships. Darwinism applied to racism, Nazism, and sexism. In other words, if it's survival of the fittest, we should keep the best of the race. We should look at men and women to decide who's more important and act accordingly. If we can make the world better by ethnic cleansing and getting rid of whole races that don't live up to our standard, and we're man, and we're the center, and we get to say who should live and who should die, the consistent application of macro-Darwinian thinking to social relationships would be this. In fact, let me read you a couple quotes that might shock you. Evolution justifies racism. This is Charles Darwin. This is him applying natural selection and survival of the fittest, much like Hitler did with the Aryan race. This is the logical application. It says the more civilized so-called Caucasian races have beaten the Turkish hollow in the struggle for existence. Looking to the world at no very distant date, when what an endless number of lower races will have been eliminated by the higher civilized races throughout the world. Charles Darwin, 1881. Huxley, who was a big fan of Darwin, building on Darwin's thinking, wrote, no rational man, cognizant of facts, believed that the average Negro is equal, still less, the superior of the white man. It is simply incredible to think that. He will be able to compete successfully with his bigger-brained and smaller-jawed rival in a contest which is to be carried on by thoughts and not by bites. Now, how politically correct is that? How many people that are adamant macro-Darwinian evolutionists want to step into that one and say the logical conclusion of survival of the fittest? I mean, this justified racism. This justified Nazism. Now, please don't hear me say Charles Darwin is at fault of all of this. We're talking about a system that was developed and multiplied and applied, and the evil human hearts of people taking bits and pieces of philosophy to say that this is what we want to do. But you gotta own the whole basket. If you're gonna buy, this is how life began. There is no designer. There is no God. There is no creator. Therefore, there is no truth. There is no morality. Then the consistent application when it comes to what races matter, who's most important. Ladies, you'll kind of hate this one, but Charlie, since I've studied him and I've become close friends, writes on this one, the chief distinction in the intellectual powers of the two sexes is shown by man's attaining to a higher eminence in whatever he takes up than can a woman. Whether requiring deep thought, reason, or imagination, or merely the use of the senses and the hands, we may also infer that the average mental power in man must be above that of a woman. So, which of these truth claims resonate and make the most sense? I would encourage you to examine the evidence for yourself. Now, let's look quickly to question number 7, which is which theory claim reflects most accurately the laws of empirical science and research. And what I want to just say here is the great scientists had historical presuppositions, okay? The great scientists, the Newtons, the Da Vinci's, they had presuppositions about order, balance, predictability. In fact, the whole scientific method grew out of a belief that's absolute contrary to random chance. In fact, I came across an article. It says Leonardo da Vinci, considered by many to be the real founder of modern science, was a committed creationist. Robert Boyle, the father of modern chemistry as well, the greatest physical scientist of his generation, was a great apologist for the Genesis account. Isaac Newton, a prodigious intellect, who developed calculus and discovered the law of gravity, designed the first reflecting telescope, not only refuted atheism, but also strongly defended the biblical account of creation. Louis Pasteur, well known for his process of pasteurization and for utterly demolishing the concept of spontaneous generation, was a devoutly religious and strongly opposed to Darwinian evolution. In Dr. Henry Morris's book, devoted to men of science and men of God, he includes other intellects: Kepler, scientific astronomy; Francis Bacon,